The Bill Clark Show, presented by Dr. Pepper. And now, Coach Bill Clark.
Welcome in. It's the Coach Bill Clark Show, brought to you by Dr. Pepper, Buffalo Rock, Pat Smith, along with Landry Roberts, Molly Robinson, the Coach Bill Clark. Coach, just a fascinating conversation last week as we kind of went back in time, your days at Prattville High School, all the way up to current time in regards to the offensive side of the ball. But, you know, you've been known as a defensive guru, so we're going to go on the defensive side. So take us back to the days of you kind of going back from that offensive line days to being a defensive guru.
Yeah, so probably for me, love of playing was defense. I was more of a defensive guy, linebacker, but I had that O-line background. So when we started out with O-line, coaching with O-line, understand offense, drawing up offensive plays as a kid. And then the first job really you find as a top assistant is the head coach is calling the plays in high school. Who's next? The defense coordinator. So I'm coaching O-line at Asheville, gotten hurt playing and started coaching early for Dad. Dad gets out of coaching. My mom passes away, and I go to Piedmont High School, defense coordinator in 1990. So that's the job that's open. Learn on the run and quickly fell in love to it and with it. And I think, I was telling our listeners about O-line and defense. There's a lot of similarities. You know, and it's like you said about defense. You feel good, they put 70 on you. You know, you relax, the band strikes up. Offensive line, guys that have to work harder, maybe they're not as athletic, you don't score touchdowns. And those two things, I think, really go well together.
The reason in high school as a player coach, I love defense is because I had an assignment as a defensive end, and we were stand up and most of the time. But there were certain assignments, outside shoulder free, right? Trail deep is the deepest back. Those kind of things, just those little keys. But other than that, it was hustle, it was effort, it was angle.
Right.
It was simplified for me, and it kind of fit me. But as a defensive coordinator, and I know that the game has changed with the hurry up and the styles of offense that we see versus those days back when I played and you coached. How difficult is that for a defensive coordinator, conversely, as opposed to an offensive coordinator and trying to dial up things on the run?
Well, what was really cool about being on the defensive side was there weren't many people over there. You know, and I say that, what I mean by that is everybody you thought of as the innovators, the hot guy, they were offensive guys. So as I went to defense and I started finding those few people, you know, Nick Saban, Tony Dungy, Bob Stoops, you know, and we'll talk some history here in a minute. But I think finding ways to stop all these, you know, wishbone versus somebody that throws the ball a lot. And then as we got into spread and the zone read, and how do you dictate to the offense? You know, the offense is sitting here dictating to us. I said they know the snap count, right? They know where the ball's going. They can hold you. It's legal. You know, so defense became the chip on my shoulder. They've got all the answers. We're going to show them. And I think that was kind of like the way I coached offensive line, that, you know, you got to be better, longer, tougher, stronger, better trained, and it all fit in also with my training background.
So last week you were telling us at Prattville with your dad as offensive coordinator how you guys were able to, especially that first Prattville team, how you guys basically took what you had.
Yeah.
You developed those kids based on the system that you had based on the roster.
Right.
Now, from a defensive side of the point of view, take us down that road a couple years later as the implementation of maybe more of the pistol, the shotgun, and the running gun became really, really famous. Like, defensively speaking, what were you doing, at least at the high school level, to try to combat that?
Yeah, so these are great. I'm going to take you even back further. So let's go back to the 70s, and my dad running a 6-1 with multiplicity out on the edges and a 4-deep secondary where
he was running a 6-1?
He was running a 6-1, which is really even off the old 4-3, where you played a game with the outside linebacker and the defensive end. I could get into the weeds here. We need a whiteboard for some of that, but I think the multiplicity of that defense. Now, granted, you're trying to stop Wishbone. And like I said, he's one of the first Wishbone guys in the state. Of course, I always loved telling Brother Oliver, whose nephew played for me, he'd come see me every year and we'd talk ball. And he said, you know, Vanderbilt threw the ball about 60-something times in 1969, you know, as we were talking about the spread.
Right.
As I said, when I go to Miami to hear the 4-3, go get the 4-3 in 1989, heard Dave Wannstedt in 87, and Dad says, well, you know, Tom Landry invented the 4-3 in 1960. it was the different kind of players that were being used, the speed. That's kind of where the game started changing. But I think for me, it was how can I be multiple and good? And I started going to visit these people, 4-3, 8-man front, bear, and then the 3-3 stack. So what I did, I went to the guy that was the guru of each one of those deals, and then I started making them mine, and that's how I created multiplicity, along with playing press coverage when I met Bob Stoops.
Back in the 70s, 80s, and I'll go ahead and say all the way through the 90s, because it was after I graduated. I graduated high school in 97, that you started seeing more of the spread and those types of things versus what we saw a lot when I was playing. But as far as scheme, did you, as a defensive coordinator, did you look at personnel and go, this is scheme, or were you married to a particular scheme early on and saying this is what we're going to do and this will defend most defenses?
Yeah, I think early on I had grown up with a dad who was multiple. You know, they were multiple defensively. I talked about I think his coach, Lou Scales, was the first to run the 50 in I think in the state of Alabama in 1957. So that being on the cutting edge, like I always said, different and good. So what I started figuring out defensively, I remember we were at Asheville High School and we went to Georgia, had the best clinic. I'm going to tell you about coaching clinics. So I used to go with my dad. I'd get to go once a year to Alabama's clinic, and it would be a speaker get up there and talk about the wedge, busting the wedge up on a kickoff. I mean, that was his talk. They gave you nothing. The only way you could get any information, you had to go to an actual school and get to know this guy, and he's going to actually give you some info. Of course, as the clinic started coming, Georgia had a good clinic in 1987. I'm there, hear football, hear ball. Dave Wannstedt gets up, and I've told this story so many times. He goes up there, he's got his leather jacket on. They've just gone to the pros, and he gets up there. Not only is he's talking about the 4-3, but he's talking about playing with speed. We're going to take our corners and move them to safeties. We're going to take our safeties and move them to linebackers. We're going to take our linebackers and move defensive ends inside. They started playing with speed. That wasn't the case. Now, I'm there to hear some defense because Ert Russell had been at Georgia. Bill Lewis was at Georgia. But the conception of the guys you're going to start playing with, smaller guys that are fast, that's what got me to drive to Miami and get that. And so then I became one of the few 4-3 guys in the state of Alabama. Johnny Williams, y'all know that name when he was at Troy. He had gotten the 4-3, I'd gotten the 4-3, so we always had some commonalities. What really changed for me was as I started saying, how do I get multiple and good at all these different defenses? And I said, I'm going to go visit the guy that's running the Bear. I'm going to go visit these different, and then I started creating multiplicity to stop the different offenses.
All right, you just mentioned Wannstedt. Tell us about your time with Coach Stoops, because I know that was important for you defensively as well.
Yeah, so Coach Stoops is at Kansas State. So, you're always looking for, all right, who can I go to that's doing more with less? And of course, there's all this stuff where can I take a college scheme and take it to high school? One of the things that got me to stay on the defense side of the ball, not take a head job, I had a chance to take a high school that was going to win, Gordo High School, when I was about 23, 24 years old. But I said, I want to keep coaching. We had 100-something players. I've got my 50 guys, and I can run any scheme I want to because that's all they do is play defense. So then if I wanted to go visit somebody, I could visit them. So I'm studying, I'm looking, you're always looking, who's the best, what's doing more with less? Here's K-State, who remember ESPN put them as the worst college football team. You remember, not even Sports Illustrated, I'm sorry.
Yep.
And all of a sudden they turn it around. All of a sudden they've got the number one defense. So I go see them. I go to Kansas State, meet Levin and Stoops. Well, guess what they're doing? They're both leaving. They're going to Florida and South Florida. Come see us. Come see me when we get there. I'm in South Georgia at Coffee County High School. Talking about doing more with less. They had been a AAA for years, bringing some other schools that can't get bumped up to Quad A in the state of Georgia. So we're playing Valdosta, Lowndes, Colquitt, college programs in high school. We've got half the number of students they do. I didn't know it when I took the job. So I said, what can we do? So I go visit. They're leaving. They talk to me. I then go spend a week at South Florida with Levitt. I go hang out with Stoops. I had a guy, an all-state DB. I bring him in. I start working the camp. I learn about press coverage. And that's how you start getting on the cutting edge. I'd have people, where'd you get that? I said, man, I go visit. I take my good players who get to get seen. I want to sit in the film room, go play golf with me. I'm like, hey, I just want to sit in your film room. And then I want to be able to ask you about these things. So I'm going and visiting every chance I get. How can I stop? Can I come by and see you? Well, I'm just a high school coach. What threat's this guy?
Yeah.
You know, of course, Mickey Andrews went to school with Dad. I always were going to see him every summer. He'd come see us. So I'm trying to get every tool in the toolbox I can get.
With a different style of defenses, I'm going to go a little bit in the weeds. We sent, whether it was the Tampa 2 and Monty Kiffin and what he ran, some of these other, I think about Joe Lee Dunn. And God rest his soul.
Went and met with him.
Yeah, and going and it seems like loading up 11 guys right there at the line, and we're going to bring it. And you better stop somebody. And we're counting on him, us getting to the ball carrier or the quarterback before you can run your play. With all of that, what is one of those defenses that some might categorize as gimmick, which is not fair, but that you think kind of caught on and concepts of that began to kind of revolutionize the way we look at defense?
You know, at the time, people didn't understand the 4-3. They thought these guys were just running upfield. Here's the things, and this is what I had a total defensive program out there. It was my program, 120-something schools across the country ran when I left Prattville and went to South Alabama because I was trying to promote us. I was promoting what I was doing that helped me in recruiting. So I'm going to tell you some stories here. So y'all seen pursuit drill.
Yeah.
So pursuit drill, I mean, not many people had heard of pursuit drill back in the day. What pursuit drill is, it is the technique and the angles which we pursue the football. I can do that out of any front and any coverage, right? Because here's what I'm teaching. There is a way to run to the football, right? So the first thing I do, I'm controlling a gap. And I've heard guys, even college coaches come to me and say, well, you know, if we just talked about gap control, okay, you know, we go A gap, B gap, we got to get a whiteboard up here. A gap, B gap, you know, the gaps, right? Yeah. Well, the linebacker's job is to make the D lineman right. I said, no, he's going to make them wrong. Because what happens when I'm sitting out here on an outside of a guy controlling him, and all of a sudden, right as the ball carrier comes, I cross the face of that lineman. Guess what's going to happen with that linebacker? He's running up into this gap. Now we got two guys in the gap. What's the ball do? It squirts. Think about a zone play as this thing moves. Everybody's running this way. You've got a gap, but where'd the gap go? It moved. So we're teaching these guys how to maintain a gap real quickly, and then how do I pursue the ball? All right, well, who's got reverse? Who's got reverse pass? These are things we built in this pursuit. These are things Miami was doing.
Right.
So they had this great 4-3. They had these great players, but they're fundamentals. And this is what we're going to come back to. Just like great O-line play is about fundamentals, great defense is about fundamentals. Well, that's the world I love to be in, right? That's where toughness and smarts and effort will win for you. Oh, what if I throw in multiplicity with it? And now we're giving you different looks. And, of course, when I was playing press man, nobody even knew what, you know. I mean, Lester Hayes, right, with the Stickum, he was playing press. So that set apart what we were doing. Different things, multiplicity. But it all went back to pursuit, and it all went back to tackling. So one of the things I started in the 1980s, I went to Florida State, Coach Bowden, Coach Andrews. I was coaching the offense at that time, and they're doing a thing called a circuit. Right? What is a circuit? A circuit is where a coach is assigned a different station, and they were doing some things like tackling. And that's when the light bulb went off for me, where I said, number one with tackling, what are we doing? We're keeping our kids safe, right? So the number one thing in football, which makes it a great sport as long as it's safe. Same thing we're doing in Coach Safely, right? So we teach a proper tackling technique that we can do without pads on through a circuit.
Yeah.
Throw the bowling balls, sink your hips, see what you're hitting. Always talking about safety. We're doing that without pads on. Then all of a sudden we add pads. Could be a sled. Could be a cutback drill. So I started talking about that in the 80s, and then we just started adding. So you go pursuit, tackling, you see what we're doing here? Now let's add another circuit where we take the ball away. Mm-hmm. Now we could build a defense with just those three things with a little bit of fundamentals, and you've got all the things we want, which is effort. It's like in this defense, who's responsible for the reverse? You remember when David Palmer, when they first started doing that and they would run him behind?
Absolutely.
What would happen? Here he comes behind on just a tall sweep. 5 guys would be sitting there waiting. Mm-hmm. That's all we want. We've cut down on pursuit. So what we want, here comes this defensive end down the line. Here comes the reverse. Somebody over here needs to be screaming reverse, right?
Yep.
If we're in man, what do? You come around and go get him.
That's right.
If you're in zone, you don't leave. You're telling this guy. Now you run to the goalpost, defensive end. Right now, go to the goalpost. What are you going to do? You're going to make it bubble. Who's staying home on the backside? As a guy that gave up, we had a team, we played Northview. I was down in Dothan. We were undefeated. They can't get a first down. They run a reverse with the fastest guy on the team. Guess who they throw the reverse pass to? The slowest guy on the team. 2 touchdowns.
Whoa.
We get beat.
Wow.
Now we're good. We're good. They got Gabe Gross. We gave up 2 plays because guess what this guy did, this DB? He leaves his receiver. So I added that to pursuit. So now we're pursuing the ball. Who's got reverse? Who's got reverse pass? So you start working on these trick plays, which are not trick plays anymore because everybody's got a responsibility.
It's interesting you mentioned pursuit drill, and that was something that you didn't want to be last in the pursuit drill if you were part of that 11. But as a defensive end, what I was told is there's a reason you're a defensive end. You're not a defensive back. So when the play gets extended out and the back is being forced to the boundary, what are you going to do? Well, you're going to pick an angle. You're going to take that angle and you're going to run as fast as you can, and you will cut him off. It's just those little things, just basic geometry, and quickest way from point A to point B is a straight line. And you kind of touched on
well,
some
and
of
we
that.
put it with the different defenses,
Right.
And then we get to be multiple with fundamentals, and now we got some.
Yeah.
Well, one thing's for sure, you get smarter when you listen to this conversation with Coach Bill Clark, and SmartBank is the place that folks need to go to do some smart banking.
Well, I was with the president and the vice president yesterday. It's funny we say that, Lee Smith, Robert Moore, and we were talking about these guys coming from a big bank but taking the small town banking that we know the people that come in. We know the people that are coming in our building, yet we've got all the amenities of a big bank, and I think that's what you will get with SmartBank.
Coach, we were just talking about the defenses, and let's talk about the spread.
Yeah.
Because now you go to a high school game, heck, a college game, even a pro game now, it's all about spreading everybody out, whether it's Heupel going from one sideline to the other sideline, whatever the case may be. From a defensive point of view, kind of take us back to when you first saw it, how you defended it, and how you would defend it now.
Okay, so first let's talk about why I'm multiple, but similar. Multiple, but simple. And I go back to the Coffee County days, and I remember telling, because I was having to share athletes, and I'm playing Colquitt. They were undefeated. They won the state championship the year before. They got FBS players, which we called D1 back then, but FBS players. I said, just give me whoever I've got. Let me go to this other field because I won't be able to get lined up. We played Bear, and then we played cover 2. We had them shut out to the end, losing the end. But that's when I really started believing in separating players for offense, defense. Now, if I got to share some guys, we'll create a crossover. We could have a whole show on that. But the point of that is, how can I got to get lined up, right? And if I can give them something a little different, because what are they doing? They're watching you play, right? They've got iPads, they got film. I mean, these guys are sitting in there. The kids are watching, the coaches, and he's watching you in a 4-3 defense. Next week, they come out, we're an 8-man front. The next week, we're in Bear. Oh, they've watched you for 2 weeks. Or I'm setting him up. I've told this story so many times, and people laugh about it, but remember what I told you? We had Jack State my last year, game 1. Didn't want to play Jack State because I knew they were good and they're FCS. But we couldn't play at the stadium. We ended up playing them. I knew it was going to be a Super Bowl, like it would be for me if I was at Jack State and I'm playing an in-state school. Oh, and the guy used to coach here.
Yeah.
And, then I got Georgia, game 2. Game 3, I got North Texas. Then I got Liberty, Tulane. I said, I can't spend an inordinate amount of time on them because we got to win these other games.
Right.
And I need to show something to these other teams that will set them up. And that's why if you can get that game where I can create a setup and play 4-3 cover 2 against a team I should beat. Now, you can't lose that game, but it's a setup for me to be multiple. Now, the problem is when who is the teams I've got to beat? Let's go back to old area play of high school. Well, I'm playing Central Tuscaloosa, who was running the Wishbone. You remember back in the day, and all 11 guys are going Division I. That's you were playing.
Yeah.
We also got Jessenier.
Had 150 that got off the bus.
Jessenier's running the Wishbone. Well, my defense better be able to beat those teams. All right, so as we start evolving, I've got how many wing T teams on the schedule, which is all about getting lined up. Are they a wing T option team? Are they a wing T spread team? Are they a wing T? You're starting to see. So as a defensive coach and me being a history major, who is this guy? Is Pat the head coach and he's calling it? Guess what Pat will do? He ain't going to fire himself. He's going to go for every 4th down a la Lane Kiffin. which is the guys I hated to go in against. You're the OC. You're playing for a defensive-minded head coach. Maybe you're more conservative.
Sure.
Those are the things I
Shout
want
out to Brian Vincent.
There you go. There you go. Just win, baby. So the point of those things is, and it's kind of like, all right, so that's a good question talking about scoring. Hey, score. Just don't turn it over
Right.
because that's what beats us.
Yeah.
Oh, I want to score.
Yeah.
But defensively, I'm trying to give you something different. So as I get ready to defend spread, we had to start figuring out who is this spread team. So these were the great things early on. People tried to go to spread. They don't know to think from a defensive mindset. Okay. There was no play action. There was no RPOs. So we're sitting there looking at that back. You know, there's no run fake. Tackle pops up, it's pass. Well, we were killing them. Then all of a sudden, we started getting some zone reads with that tackle's releasing. Oh, and we're going to throw a slant behind it. Wait a second, that's cheating. Because this tackle's 7 yards down the field. Now remember, they already can hold. They already know the snap count. They got every freaking advantage there is. Oh, let's let the tackle go 7 yards down the field, and that's not lineman downfield. Because that's who we're looking at. But who is this spread team? And so we started, I had to learn how to defend. When I'm defending myself, and, you know, it's us and Hoover. Rush understands how to run the ball. He understands how to throw the ball. We're running it, and so you get really good. Now, remember I talked about 12 personnel. We didn't see 12 personnel because that second, if they kept one tight end, the second tight end was playing defense. How many people had 12? Now, the pros had it. Mm-hmm. So the guys that had been in the pros, they had been in that world, they knew how to defend it. They didn't understand spread. So really, we start talking about playing with three D linemen. Wait a second, we're 4 down. Alabama. No, you've got to have one guy on the quarterback because he's a runner. And I remember I've told this story so many times. I've told Bob Stoops. I said, what if Peyton Manning, maybe he doesn't throw it quite as good, but he can still really throw it. Oh, and he's a running back. You just weren't seeing it. That's what we were seeing in high school. And y'all remember, even back in the day, the best athlete was at quarterback. Now, he may go to college and go play DB. He may go play running back. But a lot of times you just put your best guy back there. He could throw it, but by God, he could really run it.
Yeah.
So you better have a guy, and that's when I started playing a lot of two-man. And we're reading those tackles, and that ball would be snapped, we'd be hitting him at the line of scrimmage. You know, let's go Julio, 2006. Okay? I mean, no offense, but it was we had them 56-0 in the third quarter. But we were not going to let Julio catch the ball. We had a guy pressed him. We had a guy over the top. We called it Julio rules. I said, I want somebody over the top. Now, I had not shown two-man in a while. The other safety read the quarterback. They were simplistic on the run pass. And the guy that was coaching was a great coach. Joel Williams just got he's a college coach.
Yeah.
But I wasn't going to let Julio catch the ball and beat us, you know. So we designed something that fit that game and fit him. Played him again the next year. You know.
As far as an exotic look that against a particular team that you worked on in practice, you had to install. Mm-hmm. Was there ever a point where, look, if we show it, we're gonna show it in a specific situation,
right?
And there's two outcomes: either A, we get the stop, because they can't adjust on the fly, or B, we force them to call a timeout.
Right?
Was that ever your thinking?
Oh yeah, I mean all the time. We were constantly going. My whole deal was we're going to give you something the next week you have not seen. Of course, this is Nick Saban's MO. You know, they were so multiple and they were given so many different looks. And the looks outweighed with great athletes too. And they were going to play hard and technique. Sometimes they were out of position, but the offense didn't know it, you know. But I think saving those things week to week. Now, granted, eventually you got to show some things, but we've shown you so much, you have a hard time getting prepared because we're giving you so many looks. We're doing so many different things. Hopefully we're keeping you off balance.
I do have a question. We hear it on TV and a lot of the TV games a lot was keep an eye on that or remember that. They may come back to that because there's variations of different things that they can do. Are you thinking in real time as a defensive coordinator when you see something, whether it's a formation, a certain play that they run and just thinking, ooh, they could do that. Are you seeing that in real time where there's a variation of what they could do? You think you're going to get a toss sweep with this particular look, but late in the game, maybe it turns into a reverse, whatever.
Oh, yeah. The problem now, let me tell you why it's so hard now. There's video. I mean, you're talking about hiding something. I mean, there's actual video that they're going, we know exactly what they're doing on both sides.
Right.
So the cat and mouse game of trying to hide things and show different things, and that's where Browse got into the, you got two guys over here, and we had this on the TV one time. What does it do? We talked about you're defined. I mean, if they're raising up and throwing it to those guys now, somebody's got to call it. We call it covering down, right? Somebody's got to be sitting on top of those guys. Now the box is a simple number to count. I got 5 guys, a tight end and a back. How many do they have? And where's the safeties? And which, of course, put a lot of people in man free if they could run the ball enough, which is where Browse, and that's why Browse believed in the run game. Remember what I said about receivers? You got 3 guys that can scald it. We're going to raise them and throw it to them. You got to cover down on them. Then we're going to throw verticals. And he practiced throwing verticals. I mean, you go to watch his practice. Verticals. Because if you just throw it and it's incomplete or you throw it out of bounds, which I thought that's what they were doing with this quarterback they had a lot, I'm less worried about them. I'm going to play man free. I'm going to stop the box. I'm going to have 1 free safety. But now if I start hitting those, because it's you got 3 one-on-ones. And if they're wide enough, the free safety can't, you can go numbers to numbers, but can he go numbers to sideline?
Yeah.
I don't care who it is. So that's where he got up with that. And then we just read overhang defenders. So there we go.
Donahue Chevrolet. Noticed your car was sparkling as always coming in the parking lot today.
It's very clean inside and out.
I don't know about the inside. But
inside, I promise. Well, grandkids were in there. So
post-show inspection.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe not. But, Donahue Chevrolet, appreciate their sponsorship as always. And, of course, like we said, they got the great Chevrolets. They got a bunch of other ones, a bunch of used cars as well, but just great folks.
Coach, talking a lot about defense. I don't know how you break this down ratio-wise, but in your experience as a head coach, as a defensive coordinator at multiple levels of football, when we as fans watch a deep ball get completed, we say, what's the defensive coordinator doing? Or what did the player do on that play? How often, if you could just kind of guesstimate, would it be defensive coordinator had them in the wrong coverage, in the wrong set, player used poor technique, or player just missed assignment? Yeah.
So first, as a guy that held the mirror up, I always thought it was me. We didn't coach him good enough. We didn't get the technique right. So, and one of the things we need to talk, and we could probably talk about it on the next show, but tempo. What did tempo do to every one of these things? And, I was talking about Dad running no huddle back in the 70s. But when people started figuring that out, what that does to get people out of gaps, to get them when they get tired, when they don't get lined up. Because here's what you're trying to get that player to do is roll the decks, right? The back is offset and he's set to the tight end and wing. Here's the plays. Oh, they shift and trade. Oh, wait a second. Now it's over here. Oh, wait a second. Now the ball snapped before I can even do any of that. And I'm tired, and I'm tired, and I'm tired. So tempo changed a lot of those things. I think any coach says it starts with him. It's when the guy's out of position because it was him. The things that get you beat, you're out of gaps, you're not running to the football, and you're not tackling. So the first thing I'd always ask the defense, what are we known for? And they'd all say tackling, safety. And that's where you got there, you did everything right, and you missed the tackle.
No matter the offense, it's always been about eye candy, right?
Well, that's what they're trying to do, is trying to give you all these things to get your eyes in bad spots. They figured that out even more. There's so much information now out. So these offensive coaches, I've always said, offensive coaches learning defense coaches learning offense, and here we go.
K9 Global Protection Group, a great Alabama company, a good sponsor here at the Bill Clark Show.
Yeah, we appreciate those guys so much. And of course, also just keeping us safe. They're at major league games, they're at NFL games, they're at the airports. So those dogs, and also they're trained by veterans right here in the state of Alabama.
Coach Safely, what's going on the decks of you guys? I know you're staying very busy with that.
Well, I'm going to be putting you to work and you guys to work in August. We're going to have a big fundraiser. We're going to make that announcement real soon on who all the participants are. Of course, that money goes to getting underserved communities coaches and sports and all the things. But, of course, Coach Safely Act, get our coaches trained. One of the things we want to do right now, we're really updating the course right now. So hopefully mid-August, you're going to see a new course updated. It's same materials, but with new updates. We're going to have videos in there. I'm going to be making some announcements. We're going to have a fundraiser. So a lot of cool things coming from Coach Safely.
Outstanding. And each and every week, thanks to Buffalo Rock, Jimmy Lee, and the fine people at Dr. Pepper, they bring this program to you each and every week. And can't say enough about what Jimmy Lee and those fine folks do.
Yeah, they just support so many great causes. Obviously, our cause were near and dear to our heart, but appreciate Dr. Pepper and, of course, Buffalo Rock.
Always a great conversation, getting into the weeds with Coach Bill Clark. We're here each and every Thursday night on Jocks 94.5. You can always download it on the YouTube app. For all of us here at the Bill Clark Show, have a great week. We'll see you next week on the Bill Clark Show, presented by Dr. Pepper.
The Bill Clark Show, presented by